would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker. Licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. We have another good one for you today, folks. Some interesting data has come out. Now, we've covered this last year. This is another one of those sort of cyclical yearly things. And this one's pretty sexy, so stay tuned. I think you're going to like this one. Before we get into that, though, the usual housekeeping. If you'd like to get in contact with me, head on over to therebelbroker.com. From there, you can contact me by clicking the deceptively named contact menu item and then send me a message there. Of course, you can also get yourself in the running for a $50 Amazon gift card by clicking the red button at the top of the page titled Take the Survey to Support the Show. Give the same email address both times you're asked, answer a handful of questions, and you're done. You've helped the show, and you've gotten yourself in the running for a $50 Amazon gift card, of which we've already handed out $200. Pretty good, huh? Again, we'll be doing this drawing once a month until I decide we won't do this one every month. So the next time will be just a couple of weeks from now in February. So jump right in. Go ahead and put your name in the running for that wonderful little $50 payoff. And hopefully, if the sun shines on you and luck smiles upon you, you will be the winner of that $50 gift card. If you would like to get early access, and in some cases exclusive access to content that I create, you are going to want to join the Rebel Underground. And to do that, you can either head on over to therebelbroker.com. After you've been at the site for about 30 or 40 seconds, a window will pop up asking you if you'd like to join the Rebel Underground. Go ahead and say yes, give me your info, and you're in. Or if you prefer the more proactive approach, you can simply text the word Rebel Broker, all one word, the word Rebel Broker, to the number 44222. Follow the prompts from there. The first prompt will make it clear that you've contacted the right person, me, and then it'll ask you for some info, and then you're done. Again, that's texting the word Rebel Broker to the number 44222 to get yourself onto the list for the Rebel Underground. And happy to say that the first bit of exclusive content for the Rebel Underground, well, limitedly exclusive, it'll be a video on evaluating areas for investment purposes. That one's going to be coming out within the next week. I've tackled a couple of technical hurdles I thought I was already past, but I had to re-navigate those problems. Working on it now, so it is in the works. It will be delivered within the next week, I promise. And it'll be exclusively available to members of the Rebel Underground for the first 2 to 4 weeks. Then it will be generally available on YouTube. And I actually have several different videos with hands-on stuff in mind. I've got 2 or 3. One that will be hands-on using your iPhone as a tool when you're out there searching for investment properties. Another one relating to using Property Evaluator, which is a tool I use to evaluate properties. And I also use it to create presentations for investors to show the long-term prospects of their investment. I'll show you how to use that one and give it a review. And on that note, I would love to get suggestions from you on what things you'd like me to cover moving forward, whether that's something that would be a show like a regular podcast, or whether that would be more of a video thing. I'm getting kind of stunned by the number of people who have found the show through YouTube, and that's their first exposure to it. Then B, choose to continue consuming it through YouTube, and then C, who reach out to me and say, hey, give us something YouTube specific. So I'm going to try and carve out time to make that happen for folks. And I'd love to make it relevant, not just for those folks, but also for anyone here who listens on the podcast who'd like to occasionally maybe dip over and put their toes in that YouTube video river. I don't know where I was going with that analogy. But in any event, just create more content that you can consume in different ways that addresses issues that are most important and pressing to you. So do feel free to reach out with that if you are so motivated. Today, we're getting an article from homeunion.com. This is one that comes out fairly regularly that comes at it from just straight, right at your nose expectations in terms of if you're an investor, right? One of the things you want to know is return on investment. And it's good to know what markets are doing in this regard. What kind of performance are you getting? Are you getting great yields? Are you getting crappy yields? And one of the things that Home Union puts together is a report on this that I think is great. It's a great way to try to figure out what's going on in either your area, if you happen to be in one of these areas, or if you're someone looking for other areas that you've been interested in, or get an idea of other areas that you might be interested in. Correlate it with this list to see what sort of returns. Now, what's interesting about this list is according to what I'm reading here, is first year yields on these properties. So this isn't somebody who's purchased and has been holding on to it forever. These are folks who have jumped in, made an investment as an investor in these areas, and what they have enjoyed as first year returns on their investment. Strictly based on yields and not accounting for employment growth and future rental demand. That's what this list sort of is, according to Steve Hovland, director of research for Home Union. Quote, let's see. In the metro areas, we're going to be talking about investors stand to gain big with a small initial investment over a shorter term horizon. On the other hand, some of the other communities, and again, this is one of those lists I love because some of the hyped communities are in very amazing positions. But you know what? Let's not fool around anymore. Let's just jump in and start talking about this. Now, we've got two top 10 lists. We've got the 10 highest yielding single family residential markets, and we've got the 10 lowest yielding single family residential markets. I will include a link to this so that you can check this out for yourself and potentially track down the full list so that you can see where your community falls. Calibrating yourself to this stuff, I think, is great, particularly by way of comparison. So if you come and you check out this list and you look at it and you discover, you know what, I'm not making that percentage on my investment. Well, that would be a cue to you that you might want to reassess how you're doing things or how you have your investments arranged. Because I think it's when you're looking at some of these numbers, particularly since these are first year investments, if you are someone who has a more mature investment you've had for several years and you're not doing better than this, that's time to step back and take stock, right? That's an opportunity for you to say, all right, I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I need to change things up. Maybe I'm invested in an odd area. Maybe it's smart for me to liquidate out of the area of this metro area that I'm in now and move my investment money to another neighborhood simply because I'm not getting the yield that I need. And data like this, I think, is great for any year-end analysis of your investments. Now, as I've mentioned before, I think it's super smart to pick a regular interval at which you analyze your properties. You should be looking at the competition, who's renting similar properties in your area and for how much. Is it more or is it less? If you can get into rental properties that compete against yours that are currently on the market, see how much they're renting for and what amenities they offer. The internet makes this super easy because in most cases, there's going to be pictures associated with some of these properties. I find that a lot of the rentals don't include interior pictures, which is odd, but oftentimes you'll find they do. So in those circumstances, you can get an idea of what these competing properties are offering. And it's also a good idea to look at the broader area of the city that you're in and say to yourself, I have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and I'm noticing in the area where I'm located, I'm getting X amount of dollars less than in this other part of town. If I were to liquidate the home I currently have as an investment and use all the funds I get from that, all the proceeds I get from that to purchase over here, and taking into account the loan I might underwrite, given the difference in rental rates that I'm seeing in these two areas, I would actually make a little bit more, even servicing perhaps a new purchase that was a little bit more than what my property was worth. I'm finding that because of the rental difference, I'm actually making a little bit more money. That's absolutely something to do. And I think it's wise, particularly since we're still in a phase where interest rates are still beneficial enough. And in fact, on the subject of interest rates, man, did we call it on this show. Interest rates are down again the last time I checked. So that's this week. This was Tuesday I checked interest rates, and they were again down. So everything's looking good for folks that are looking to do the investment thing. So if this is a change you're looking at making, you're still in a great range to make these changes as affordable as humanly possible. Okay, now the very first one we're going to talk about here is an absolute surprise. Because remember, this is first year. These are yields in the first year after purchasing a single family residential home and putting it up for rent. Okay. Number 10 on our highest yielding single family residential markets is one that I think thumbs its nose at me a little bit. And that is Detroit, Michigan. Detroit has appeared on some lists in the past in terms of potential, in terms of places people should be looking. I have kind of poo-pooed it a little bit in my own, so mea culpa for me. However, my reasoning there is that, and I still hold to that, is I think that in a market like Detroit that has such huge challenges, that getting ground truth in a market like that is absolutely the difference between success and failure. And while that's always true, I think it's exceptionally true here. I think you need really good people on the ground who know the marketplace. I think you need to really look at what the city is doing in different parts of town to make the right decision, to buy wisely. And it's obviously paying off for some folks to show up at number 10 on this list for first year return on investment of 6.9%. And that's the average, right? So there's some folks making more, some folks making less, but that's a pretty amazing place for that to show up. And also what we'll do is maybe for some of the sexier ones on our list here, we'll go ahead and also look at some details because there's a couple on here that I haven't seen before. At least I don't remember seeing them before. But a couple of old favorites are here too. Anyway, so number 9 on our list, Charlotte, North Carolina, 7.1%. I have a teeny little bit of exposure to Charlotte. I like Charlotte, North Carolina. There's a and I don't even know if this is still true. I was there looking at properties in the 90s, but there's this cool technology triangle park area. So there's high tech up in that area. There's a bunch of different stuff going on near Charlotte. I think it's an interesting town, but again, 7.1% return on single family residentials for first year investors. Tampa, Florida, one that has reappeared on many of our lists. Actually, a lot of different Florida communities. We've got a couple different Florida places represented here. Tampa, Florida, 7.1%, so tied with Charlotte, North Carolina. Jacksonville, Florida, 7.4% first year return. Chicago, Illinois, another one that see, and this is what is one that gets you there, right? This is that sort of fills in that or supports that old saying, in chaos there is profit. Right? Or in confusion, there is benefit, right? I think that's an old Sun Tzu saying or an off of that. And in addition, from Operation Petticoat, it's a quote from that movie with, let's see, I believe it was a quote from Tony Curtis in Operation Petticoat, if you've missed that one. So that's where I'm getting my wisdom from now, old movies from the 60s. Anyway, so it may be an example of that, folks who have been willing to jump in, make smart decisions, take advantage of the fact that a lot of people may be running away from these markets because of what we read in terms of headlines. And places like Detroit and Chicago, which are two headline grabbing places in terms of bad news. And we're seeing returns that are in the top 10 nationally for first year investors. So these aren't folks who invested years ago. These are folks who've invested in the last 12 to 18 months who are seeing these returns. Pretty good. And I think it's also a testament to the idea of don't necessarily ignore these places that are facing challenges, but be brave enough to navigate a path that works through them and potentially takes advantage of a circumstance that will yield you a return. Next on our list is Atlanta, Georgia, with 7.6% return. Atlanta is always on our list. We talked about Atlanta the other day. It is one of those towns where everyone I talk to either says it's horrible or it's amazing. You just got to make sure that you're able to filter those two and focus on the amazing, or at least maybe just the border of amazing, because if you're in the heart of amazing, prices tend to be a little bit up there. Next on our list is Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Mixed feelings about Philadelphia. I've been to Philadelphia a few times. I absolutely, a big city like that is going to present a lot of opportunities, but it's coming in at 7.9% on first-year return for single-family residential homes. Next on our list, and this is a oldie but a goodie. It's one of my favorites. I love the fact it's on this list again. I occasionally bring this up, and again, it's another one of those cities where I'll get people telling me I'm nuts for thinking that this is a cool town to check out. And it's on that list of cities I've threatened to go look at, along with places like Chattanooga. And it's Memphis, Tennessee. 8.5%. So if I had acted on what I thought was a smart move a year and a half ago, I would have enjoyed at least probably an 8.5% return. So there you go. And I actually continue to have an active search running on Realtor.com for Memphis, Tennessee, and also for Chattanooga. I'm a little bummed Chattanooga. I'm kind of like to figure out what Chattanooga appeared. If I'm not mistaken, it was this list last year that actually had Chattanooga on it. I'm not 100% sure. We went through a lot of lists. It may have been a list that was catering to millennials and high-tech people because they had just gotten that city installed fiber for super hot internet access. Anyway, next on our list, and this is number 2, coming in above Memphis, is Columbia, South Carolina. And you know what? I don't mind admitting when I am a bonehead, because right now I'm recording over what I recorded originally for Columbia, because when I read Columbia on this list, it didn't have the state after it. So I had said Columbia. I just spent the summer, well, not all of it, but a good chunk of time in Columbia, California, which is a preserved like 1850s gold rush town. And I thought, given the fact that I had been there and we had spent time there kind of doing the whole tourist thing, I'm like, how in the world does this town end up being number 2 on our list for yields for 2017? Well, of course, it wasn't Columbia, California. It was Columbia, South Carolina, with a 9.3% return or yield in 2017 for investors. Now, because we're interested in these things, right? We want to focus on these places that are giving us such great yields. I thought, why not take a moment here and take a look at Columbia and look at what the averages are, because these numbers are super, super close in terms of absolutely working for investors. And whenever they come this close to the ballpark stuff, it's absolutely worth taking a closer look. So let's jump in and get some broad stroke observations about Columbia. First, barrier to entry. Barrier to entry is how much it costs you to buy a typical property. Well, according to Trulia, the median sales price, so this must be a state where they report sales price, right? Remember, some states keep that confidential. It's not public info, is $142,502. Excellent. Great. Median rent per month is $1,100. That is also great. And why? Because what we typically want to do is take 80% of what the average sales price is, and then take 1% of that, and that gives us what we should expect to earn in rent to make the amount of money we need to make. So if we do that, if we take 80% of $142,502, we're left with $114,001.60. So that means that the 1% of that would be $1,140. So we're super close. We're absolutely in that sweet spot in terms of seeing that our rent would meet the needs of servicing a loan on this particular property. So just right off the bat, that's encouraging, right? So what we'd want to do in that case is jump in and start doing some of the analysis of this community. Let's look at some real world application of this on specific properties, run the numbers and see what actually works. And that is exactly what we're going to do on that YouTube video I was talking at the opening of the show. We're going to walk through the process. We're going to basically take it from right here. In fact, maybe we'll use Columbia, or maybe I was thinking we'd use Sacramento. I actually kind of already shot some of it using Sacramento, so maybe we'll just do that. But in any event, you pick the city you're going to do it, and then you move forward and you go through and you look for specific places where you could potentially invest and make your money. Now, median sales price has fluctuated a little bit over the last year. It's again at $142,000. Rent saw a little bit of a peak back in May at 1,147, got up to 1,150 as of September, and then kind of dropped back down to 1,100. So all of these numbers that we're seeing absolutely overlap or cover our whole 1% rule that we've talked about here on the show before. So thumbs up for Columbia, South Carolina. I think just at first blush, it's absolutely worth taking a closer look at. And one idea would be, whenever I do a show like this, what if the next YouTube video I did was a deeper analysis of the marketplace and look for some specific examples? Whenever I do one of these top lists, we'll take the top 1 or 2 entry that looks the most sexy in the podcast, and we'll do a more detailed view. Does that sound like something folks would want to do? Reach out to me if you like that idea. I think it could be a cool thing for folks to get an enhanced look into what we're discovering here in terms of great marketplaces. All right, now let's go ahead and talk now about the number 1 city. This is one that has shown up on several lists that we've reviewed over the last year in terms of attractive places to invest. But before I reveal the number 1 item, we're going to take a quick break. So don't go away. We'll be right back with the number 1 top yielding metro area for 2017. So don't go away. Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner, broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909. Welcome back, everyone. We are running down the top 10 list from homeunion.com of the highest yielding single family rental markets for 2017. We've counted it down all the way to number 2, which was Columbia, South Carolina. And we took a quick look at what the overall view of the market is in Columbia, South Carolina, and came to the conclusion looks pretty good. Very low barrier to entry in terms of being able to acquire a property, and in terms of comparing the average price to acquire with the average rent, absolutely passing our 1% rule. So clearly a place that might be worth your time if you've got any interest in going into that area at all. Number 1 on our list is Cleveland, Ohio at 10.9%. 2017 yields. And that's, remember, for folks who just jumped in. These are new acquisitions. These are folks who made their purchases and this was their first year. So I think that's pretty spectacular. That's a pretty good record. And I love the fact that we've got the top community of just above 10%. It gives folks a little bit more elbow room in case there's a downturn of any kind in terms of being able to absorb a potential reduction in rents. I like that. I like backup plans. I like plan Bs simply because you know that you can rest a little bit more comfortably in the face of any potential downturns. Now, do I see any of that coming? I don't know about the Cleveland market, but I don't see that happening in my market. Even with anticipating bad things happening, I don't think those bad things happening equal a reduction in rent. I think it equals, in fact, if it's the same kind of bad thing that happened last time in terms of folks being foreclosed on, losing their homes, that type of thing, that actually results in a net increase in rents. So I'm not sure that's something I need to shield myself from, but this is absolutely a great place to be if this is a concern for you, if you want to have something that's got a little bit of a safety net to it. Okay, so one thing that's really amazing about the Cleveland report, and again, the rate of return is fantastic, but wow, what a low barrier to entry. I almost question whether or not this is real. Median sales price in Cleveland is $70,000. Median rent per month, $850. Obviously, more than surpasses our 1% rule. Now, if we go ahead and assume take 80% of 70,000, which is $56,000, you take 1% of that, which is $560, and if you can make an average of 850, that indicates to me that if that's what we're seeing for an average, you're going to be able to find an awful lot of properties in Cleveland that are going to make good sense in terms of being a solid investment. And let's see here. In terms of median sales price, we saw things peak in August at $84,000, and now they're down to $70,000. In terms of median rent, we saw things peak as usual in the summer months when people are renting. There's more demand at $950, and it has now rested about $100 below that at $850. Which brings up another topic. Trying to be, I realize this is difficult. Anyone who's owned property knows that timing when people come and go from your property is almost impossible. Folks will give you that month's notice or whatever amount of notice they're required to give you, and it's almost never at a good time for you, or at least oftentimes will not coincide with the best time to potentially get the top rent. But it's interesting to note that this average made such a big swing. I mean, $100 swing isn't anything to sneeze at. So if you can manage to stay in good enough contact and on good enough terms with your tenant that you can really get an early notice on when they're going to move and try to coordinate that move with them leaving at the beginning of summer, so you can take advantage of the fact that rents tend to get a higher rent in those summer months. It would be a great way for you to try to solidify that or maximize your return. This would absolutely be something I'd be interested in taking a look at when I do sort of my quick scan of the area. I do see Cleveland has a few hot zones in terms of crime risk. There are some pockets that are a little bit nicer. If we go over to homes for sale and we limit it to 3 or more bedrooms, which is obviously your bread and butter, right? In this market, that may not necessarily be the truth. And then you zoom in here some more and you go back to looking for 3, and I'm seeing $79,000 for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. I'm seeing $12,500 for a 4-bedroom, 1-bath. I believe that's in kind of a red zone there. I'm seeing $81K, 16.9. Again, these are all for 3 bedrooms, $35,000, $22,000, $10,000, $30,000, $140,000. This one better be freaking amazing. 3-bedroom, 1-bath. You'd want to try to get 3-bedroom 2. Here's a 3 and 2, $139,900. It's kind of mind-boggling. 4-bed, 2-bath for $16,500. If we overlay crime, let's see here. And I love this. For a quick analysis, there's just no better way to go than some of these. And clearly you're seeing big discounts in the areas that have crime problems. And whenever you see a challenge like that, and here's one thing I'd like to say right off the bat. If we had different numbers relating to acquisition costs and barriers to entry, seeing some of this crime stuff, I would tend to back away a little bit from this. But given how easy it is to get into this particular marketplace, I would absolutely simply try to overcome these issues by shopping wisely. But you absolutely see some skewing based on this dynamic, right? Where the crime rates are the highest, the prices tend to be the lowest. And then we see homes over here that's a 6-bedroom. Geez, who needs that? 5-bedroom, 5-bath for $259,000. Here we go. 120. This is looks like a all green area of town. $119,500 for a 4-bedroom, 1-bath. $150,000 for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. This would be a go-to for me. It's in a relatively good area, easy access to an area, some place called Tremont and the 71 and 90. There are things we could pluck right out of here that look like great options. and then we can check and see what happens in terms of rents for these areas, and potentially walk away with a great return on investment like so many folks have enjoyed over the last year in Cleveland. All right, now let's go ahead and quickly run down the list of the lowest yielding single-family residential markets. Really kind of interesting. Let's go ahead. Yeah, so just some stunners on this list, and a couple of them are going to blow your mind, because remember the conversation we've had over the past few weeks in terms of highest appreciation, all the markets you believe are hot, right? First one, the 10th worst, so the highest yield of the worst is Riverside, California, 4.5%. We've talked about Riverside. Riverside is another one of those growth, things are going nuts cities. Now, should any of these be interesting to you? You'd have to have a completely different strategy. You'd have to believe, I'm going to make less, but I'm going to enjoy more appreciation. So you'd have to believe there's a lot more. In order for this to make sense for me as an investor, I've got to believe the thing I'm buying has a lot more appreciation ahead of it, so that the return I'm making on rent is really just icing. What I'm really doing is investing because I believe these things are going to go up. And that's always interesting to do. I think it's a little bit more dicey in today's market, depending on where you are. I prefer the more reliable returns that you're going to tend to get from a rental, but that would be the motivation, right? Next is Portland, Oregon at 4.3% return. Another one that's been, and again, every single one of these has been on our list of the hottest markets, right? The big headline-making markets for being so amazing. Denver, Colorado, 4.2%. Now, the reason why these are so low is because the acquisition costs are so dang high that it's difficult to be positive cash flow. And I'm willing to bet that if we could really look at these numbers, we'd see there's an awful lot of folks, because I know a few, who are seeing negative cash flow from some of these investments in some of these communities, particularly the ones that we'll see at the top of this list. Next, Oakland, California with 3.9% return. Remember, these are first-year returns. Seattle, Washington, 3.6%. San Diego, California, 3.5%. Los Angeles, California, 3.5%. And here we go. Here's where it gets sexy. San Francisco, the third worst metro area for single-family residential returns in 2017. San Francisco, 3.2%. Next, number 2 on the list, San Jose, California, which is the community, the big community just north of me, the big metro. San Jose is freaking gigantic, so it's hard to call it a community. It's a collection of hundreds of communities. Is at 3.1%. And again, these are all cities that we've talked about over the last couple of weeks about in different contexts of how amazing they are. Orange County, California, 3.0% yields in 2017, the lowest yield in the country. So I think what this reinforces is what we've talked about all the time, is that these high profile, high headline communities reach a point where they're not a payoff for you. Now, can they be? Absolutely. That you can find some of these cities where if you go for the whole, I'm riding the appreciation wave, if that's your thing, some of these can absolutely play out. I'm not sure that a lot of these areas are potentially attractive in that area. I'm not 100% sure that you're going to see enough growth to make these yields make sense. San Francisco comes to mind. San Francisco and San Jose immediately come to mind. Just because we're seeing and I'm most familiar with those, we're seeing flattening there. Remember? And some of the other numbers that we saw in terms of failed escrows. Remember, San Jose was on that list. Interesting, right? And we had some theories. Appraisals may be playing into that, where homes just aren't appraising, so the financing end of it is what's falling through, because we've reached that peak. And you would not want to be in a position where you're locked in at a yield of 3% on a property that's not going to achieve its primary goal for you, which would be the only reason to do this, which is continued appreciation that gives you way more payoff than the actual rents are, where you're getting tens of thousands of dollars in return in terms of equity on increase in property value. So I hope that's helpful. I tell you, when you more intelligently approach these things and look at these numbers and don't really buy into the hype, you're going to find yourself in a position where I think you're much better off. Now, if it were me, I'd probably visit someplace like Columbia or Cleveland, and instead of having one property worth $1.1 million that's only making me 3%, I'd rather have, well, geez, in Cleveland, I could buy 10 or 12 properties that each would probably make me in the ballpark of 10%. And suddenly, and it diversifies my investment, not by region, but at least it diversifies it in terms of if I lose my tenant, I don't lose 100% of my monthly income, right? If I've got that $1 million property in San Jose or San Francisco and I'm renting it and they tell me they're leaving, well, for the amount of time they're gone and out of that house, I make $0 per month. I go to Columbia or Cleveland, I rent 10 properties, assuming, I don't know, how frequently would folks be mobile in those towns? Let's assume every year I'm seeing one move out. That means that one of my 10 properties for some number of months each year doesn't generate money, but the other 90% of my holdings continue to generate cash flow. That feels pretty sexy to me. I hope it sounds sexy to you too. All right. So as always, folks, I absolutely hope that the time you invest in listening to this show is repaid over and over again by what we share. And I hope this is an example of that, and that you're able to take some of this data, maybe just roll it around in your head, think about how it might apply to you, or maybe come up with some new ideas based on it. Thanks again for listening, everybody. I'll talk to y'all next time.